there's other euphemisms they use to describe those kinds of activities, but it's become normalized. The weaponization of propaganda has become normalized.
There's the wording from
overall behavioral interventions or nudges like the ones implemented by OES have been found to be effective. In recent psychological science article, researchers identified several policy areas of interest, example, healthcare.
Here we go, 2015 is when it was implemented.
So 2015.
Executive order.
President Obama signs an executive order requiring federal agencies to incorporate behavioral insights into their evaluation efforts. That's a nice way of saying the use of propaganda on the American people.
Modern psychology has been weaponized. It's been intentionally weaponized in the context of military activities in the domain that, one way to express it, the term is used, the kind of term of art in military jargon is fifth-generation warfare, or you could call it psychological warfare. And what it distinguishes the present from, say, Sun Tzu and, ancient propaganda has always been part of warfare in humans. But we haven't had the digital world. We haven't had modern psychology. We haven't had nudge technology. We haven't had all these tools that allow the control of information, thought, perception, feelings, emotions that have become commonplace. And that, is and has this suite of technology and capabilities that we saw deployed in all of us were built in a kind of a structured way, largely by UK and US leadership in the intelligence community, as a weapon of war to counter these successful insurgencies that we keep losing wars over. Vietnam being a notable example all the way through Afghanistan. And so that's why it was built. But then that tech got deployed by governments against their own citizens. And this was really launched in large part in the United States by a presidential directive from Barack Obama. I'm not making this up. You can look it up. And by the way, the presidential directive is still in place that established the nudge technology units in the United States. They were already operating in the UK. And in the UK, it's quite advanced. When you look at the UK politics right now and what's going on there with all the censorship and everything, this is no joke. We're barreling right to that endpoint, same as Canada has. We're just a little bit behind. And there we have the benefit of the First Amendment in a constitution and, often on courts. But there they don't have those obstacles. And the government believes in the UK that once they have won an election, it's perfectly acceptable to deploy this modern psychology and information control technology on their own population. And I argue that once that Rubicon is crossed, the idea of democracy, because the tech is so powerful, becomes completely perverted. And we got a good hard taste of that during COVID. What you and I experienced, what you experienced with ivermectin, what you experienced with, just talking about your own experiences, and the blowback that happened after we did that little hit, is a super powerful, clear case study in understanding this intersection of modern psychology, warfare technology, and the digital world, and algorithmic control of information, the creation of digital avatars for all of us, the application now in present of artificial intelligence to custom craft messaging that gets fed into our digital domains on a regular basis in order to, sell us whatever, but also to shape how we think and to control what information we get access to all the time. Just to give an example, my wife, who does a lot of our research for our Substack, was talking to me the other day. She just gave me a couple examples where stories that were in corporate media in the United States that weren't listing certain key names or whatever. She said, I just go to the Hindustan Times. Hindustan Times is a great source for all the stuff that we're not allowed to see here in the United States. You're now in an environment, an information environment, where you cannot rely on, but we all know that. You can't rely on corporate media, but the rules, the boundaries that are being set up about information are profound, and they're completely distorting our ability to process what's happening around us. Can I give you the example of what actually happened? You said in our example with the blowback in Spotify. This is documented by a report out from the House about COVID and what happened. And that report only carries just through to the early part of the vaccines, and then it stops. For some reason, they didn't really want to go down the road to the vaccines. They did talk a lot about the events around the, let's say, lab leak hypothesis, which is allowed. You're allowed in D.C. now to talk about that.
Finally.
Yeah, you're
After
still,
like-
and
It was about 4 years later you were allowed.
yeah.
to talk about it. Yeah.
So what was documented was that the trail of events was that we had our discussion. That triggered, and this is going to sound bizarre, but this is what's documented. That triggered Coca-Cola Corporation to complain to the Global Alliance for Responsible Media, which is created by the World Economic Forum. It's just one of these global aggregators that controls advertising. The Global Alliance for Responsible Media, which, by the way, had a dust-up with Elon Musk and lost, and they closed it down as a nonprofit. It still exists in other ways, but as a structure that could be sued by X, it disappeared when he stood up against it. But Global Alliance for Responsible Media had a socket with Google AdSense, by the way. So they control the advertising ecosystem, which kind of matters to Spotify. So Coca-Cola complains to GARM, saying, this guy Rogan, you got to shut him down, okay? You got to put pressure on Spotify. So Spotify gets the message from GARM that we're threatening to pull your advertising. Okay. Now, what happens between that and your experience, I don't know. It's not transparent to me what you experienced. We all remember the Laurel Canyon crowd saying they were going to pull their catalogs, which they didn't actually own, right? That was another thing. And then they went after you with this mashup of inward historic events. There was clearly a concerted effort to take out Joe Rogan.